It's a big mistake not to invest in Africa. There's no question about it. Africa now, that is about 1.4 billion people with incredible amounts of natural resources and many other resources. But people themselves, 1.4 billion people, do not be wise to ignore them. You ignore them at your own peril because they can create problems not only in Africa but elsewhere, as we have come to know. But Africa is not one country.
54.
55 actually now.
Oh, okay. You're right.
So it's not one country. There are many countries. Maybe they may have problems, but where don't you find problems? I'm sure every investor you would be talking to comes from a country that has one problem or another. So they must be conversant with this situation. But that's not the point I want to make. The point I want to make is we should first of all understand what the problems are and not exaggerate, and also understand that Africans and their leaders want to do their best to address these problems that have kept us all behind the rest of the world. When we talk about coups d'etats are a very bad thing. There's no question about it. But people need to go beyond just hearing coup d'etats and look at what is the possible origin of these coups. And coups also presupposes that these are just military people taking over power from constitutional or civilian governments. But you have to understand also that there are some very bad civilian governments too. So that's one thing leads to another, and therefore in analyzing that, you want to see what is the cause of this bad thing that has happened, and then fix that. So when you look at governance generally, you want to look at which place that is able to look at or look after its own people, make the very investments we are talking about so that people and countries can thrive. And for the time being, not even bothered so much where this is originating from, because if bad governance is done by bad leaders who are civilians, still it is bad governance and it will cause problems anyway. And this bad governance and coups are not confined to Africa. In fact, they have association with the interaction of the rest of the world, particularly those countries that, as of origin, as we know, who were either the colonizers of this Africa. So first of all, was colonization a good thing? But it happened. And even after colonial times, actually the sort of relationship between those who were colonized with the colonizers stayed in a different form and stayed affecting the people of the continent. One example is the incredible amount of control those people still exercise in the continent. You find those coups or bad governance happening on the watch of the very people who colonized those countries and still working with them as if nothing is happening. When things go wrong, of course, you are right to blame the Africans. I think for me, I would blame them for having allowed it in the first place. Having allowed that people from outside should come to any country, to Africa, and start telling people what to do, what not to do, and when things go wrong, they just jump the ship and start blaming the very people they told to do what they did and later on backfired.
How can we eradicate corruption, Mr. President?
It doesn't happen just by going to church and praying or to mosque. No, it happens because you don't want it and you do things that will stop it, and that is everybody, including leaders.
Of course.
Must be held accountable. Leadership is about doing what makes sense to the leader, but more importantly, to the people we lead. So if we keep fixed on that and not just telling stories that don't amount to anything, I think we should be more practical, more pragmatic, and focused on performance and results and how we benefit people than anything else, in my opinion. I think that's what we have tried to do in different ways. And you can see it in the results. In the end, the results prove it. It's not that there is a good leader, but then unfortunately things don't happen and so on. So maybe something else needs to be done or looked at. So being a good leader isn't very easy to define, but it's about what you do and with the people and the results, and you are able to see a significant way forward. 52% of our population is women. So you can imagine what would happen in one's country if we exclude the 52%. I mean, you're just doing harm to yourself. The second is women have rights too. They're just human beings like all of us. In fact, we are lucky we are born to women, all of us. There's a woman in everyone's life. There's no question about it. So how can you, at a certain point, forget the existence of the very people who bring us to existence? And for us, part of our history with the struggle, in fact, women did participate directly in the struggle to be able to achieve back our country, which we had lost for many decades. Some of us were refugees for so many years outside of our country. So, based on that basic fact, you know that women are very important, and therefore not only investing in them, but giving them space to participate and do the things they can do with the rest of us, with the men, then it's the country to gain, it's everybody to gain. So that is our thinking, and it has proven us right. I think wherever they have tried it, it has been proven right as well.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king, I think I'm a king,